I know I've been making fun of a lot of anime's titles as of recently, but this one is just asking for it too much. So here we go. One day, two people were trying to communicate words relating to the anime. Unfortunately for them, K is also an abbreviation for OK, so they weren't able to understand each other, and then they both died happily ever after. The end. Anyway, when I first saw the title, I originally thought the creators were extremely clever to choose something so simple to give a contrast to other anime, or they were just being plain lazy. I would like to say it was very clever considering I doubt I would have watched the anime without it, but after finishing the show, I'm much more leaning on the lazy side. I'll admit there's a couple things I did very much like, but at the same time, barely any of the characters are interesting and the presentation of the story can range from being poor to, well, a train wreck. The anime begins by introducing our protagonist Yashiro, who enjoys living his average life. Well, all until a video of a murderer who looks very similar to him is released, which results in him getting hunted down by several people and being pushed into the affairs of clans and their proclaimed kings, such as the Blue Clan and the Blue King, the Red Clan and the Red King, and other groups and so on. Now, before I start to get a bit more than mildly irritated, there was one thing that was done well, that being the beautiful animation. The anime has a very unique design by its creative use of colors. I know some people might not like it, as sometimes it might seem like the animators are trying to fit as much color as they possibly can into one frame, but the way they mix that color is perfect color theory. Such as, they might combine blue and green into a background to make a very pleasing analogous color scheme. Not to mention, the backgrounds also have a fair amount of detail and effort put into them. Everything has a very smooth and pleasing appearance to it to make the anime a treat for the eyes. Besides a few recycling of the intro animation and one scene where the animators apparently weren't up for animating a guitar, the character animation had some great movement and fluency. However, even though I do like the artistic direction of the show, an anime is not made good by its animation. Let's look at our main character Yashiro, who falls in line with being a generic protagonist. Where, yet again, he's just that basic nice guy protagonist with nothing to define him. Oh, here we go again. To be fair, he does have a few lines that could show a carefree personality and a few scenes that could show he had some smarts to him, but they are so far and in between you can't really call it a complete personality. If you want to create a good personality, it should be constantly affecting and defining them, and not just comes up every now and then when the writers are in that special mood. However, the main problem with Yashiro is that having him going through his life falling apart and becoming seen as a criminal is completely uninteresting. You can't expect the audience to care about his life falling apart when we don't even know what makes it so valuable or even any type of base reason to care about it happening. Just showing a few scenes of him doing everyday life is not a good way to express why it's so valuable. It even seems like Yashiro himself doesn't care about it all that much. The emotional extent of his reactions varies from sometimes getting a bit surprised to being mildly disappointed. You can't expect any strong emotions about the possibility of him dying that would really resonate with the viewer. A more powerful drama would have this situation completely tear down his character with a strong presentation of his mental state. Although they do show his mindset in a depressed way, which could have worked out well if us the viewer could relate to him. You could argue that this is just part of his carefree personality, but that still doesn't fix the problem of having no reason to be invested in what's happening to him. The next member of the trio is a swordsman commonly nicknamed Kuro, who's basically just an uninspired version of the super serious type character with nothing to make him unique. The show tries to pull off his little obsession with his old master as definability, but it really doesn't work. Since they barely show anything about why he honors his master so much, you can't connect with this plot point on a character level. Just having Kuro say his master was meaningful to him and only having one flashback that only lasts a few seconds is not strong drama that will resonate with the viewer. Now, to be honest, it seemed more like the anime was trying to present this as a quirk rather than a serious plot point. However, little quirks can only add on to a character when done right and can't carry the whole weight like a definable personality or meaningful drama can. Just like Yashiro, we are yet again given a character without a strong personality and nothing to make him worth getting invested in. The last of the main characters is a girl/cat named Neko, whose name when translated into English just means cat. Truly, the creativity is overflowing with this name. At least Yashiro's nickname Shiro, meaning white, and Kuro's meaning black, were just nicknames. I know this is kind of an unimportant thing, but it's kind of like calling a dog dog. You kind of look at someone like, really? That's what you named it? Anyway, getting back on track, here's all the info you need to know to understand Neko's character. When the anime first introduces her, she is completely naked. Okay, moving on, character analysis over with, that was pretty good. Okay, fine, I won't be that lazy. As far as a personality, she is very hyperactive and childish, and I'll be honest, it's not that bad. The extreme extent of her personality is able to give her some definability, and this combined with some scenes where she messes around with Kuro just makes her enjoyable to watch. However, after a while, these traits start to get a bit too overemphasized, and they are not complex or interesting enough of a personality together for her not to become a bit of a one-note character. The anime tries to fix this by attempting to create a moment by just regurgitating up a flashback, but it isn't able to create any strong drama. A 30-second-ish glorified clip show that only explains that Yashiro took care of Neko as a cat isn't super impactful. The obvious intent of her being a blatant fanservice character aside, while at times okay, she definitely isn't good enough to become much of a strength of the show. One of the two main problems with the story, at least with the first half, is that it's simply, flat out, not interesting. A good amount of the anime is set aside to have Kuro try to choose if he wants to deem Yashiro as evil and kill him. The main problem here is that there's not a single reason to ever believe that this will happen, and therefore it can't create any tension in the possibility of Yashiro dying. I mean, Kuro, being the super determined servant of his master to fulfill his last wish of killing the murderer in the video, decides that it's fine to take a break and eat with the guy he threatened to kill because, you know, he's hungry and tired of chasing him. You don't need to see them sitting happily next to each other on the intro to know that it's stupidly obvious that Kuro isn't going to kill Yashiro. The anime, on the other hand, keeps going back and forth on whether Yashiro is going to die, and man, it stays on this plot point way too long and it's just so boring. Even without this, a good amount of the time is set aside to just having the three of them take Kuro to Yashiro's class, organizing a school festival, and other basic boring things. Unfortunately, this isn't my major problem with the plot. The next, much more important problem is that the presentation of the story and the world is a complete mess. Instead of introducing you to the world and the characters, they just blindly throw you into it with very little to no explanation about what's going on. For example, I kept asking myself, what are these magical powers? Who are these blue guys? Are they like part of the government? What is a Weissman level? Why in the world are there floating swords in the sky? Yeah, they do explain this stuff later, but that doesn't change the fact that at the beginning you'll be completely lost on what in the world is going on. You know, this really wouldn't be that much of a problem if they only focused on Yashiro and have him reflect the confusion of the audience, so that we would learn more about the world as he does or explain about how the world works through the story. However, the anime has scenes where the characters talk about elements of the world that we know nothing about. Such as, take a look at this and keep in mind that nothing they're talking about is explained beforehand.
What do you know? Look who decided to drop by.
Suo, I'm going to get right to the point. All of our monitors have issued the same warning. Your Weissman level is pushing its limit. If the Sword of Damocles should fall, we'll experience a repeat of the Kagutsu crater. I came down here to warn you in person. If you draw more power from the Dresden slate, I'll be forced to kill you.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
If you just have your characters come off as talking about the plot in complete jargon, that's exactly what it's gonna be to the viewer. You need to explain stuff before you talk about them, and this type of "I'll do it later, mom" attitude also affects some of the characters. In one episode, there's a big fight between two members of the opposite clans where one of them is upset over the betrayal and death of one of their clansmen while the other one wants more power, and both of their motivation is explained later, after the fight. This resulted in killing any investment in the characters or the result of the fight because the anime never gave a reason to care. In the end, it just creates a mindless fight scene. Even when they do get around to talking about the kid the Red Clan is so angry about that died, they do a pretty poor job of presenting it. Unfortunately, he plays a major role, not just the motivation for several characters, but the Red Clan as a whole. When you have a character who's very important to the story, it's not a good idea to mess that up. The kid named Tatara seems to be created along the idea of, well, we're going to kill him off, better make him the most freakishly lovable little thing ever created. While it's not a bad idea to use a death to fuel a story, if you can't make that death meaningful, it kinda messes up the purpose of his character. All he does is basic day-to-day interactions and repeatedly tells the Red King that he believes in him. Nothing is done to strongly present the idea that the Red Clan cares about him. Not to mention some of his lines come off as a bit too cheesy.
A king is what you're meant to be, and that means your powers are not meant for destruction. They exist to protect.
The best thing to do here would be to create some powerful drama or a very believable and likable friendship with one of the other clan's members. Just having him make basic conversations and play the guitar with them can't create a strong connection to the other characters or the viewer. Therefore, when the Red Clan decides to go on a huge revenge scheme, it kinda comes off as a little unrelatable and forced. The anime doesn't even give out a full episode devoted to him, and not that something has to reach a certain time limit to be good, but as a rule of thumb, the less screen time a character has, the more important it is to make that time really meaningful, or else it's very easy for him to lose impact on the viewer. Another character that plays an important role in the story, especially in regards to Yashiro, is a guy named Weissman. His whole drama is that he's upset about the death of his sister, who he shares like 3 lines of dialogue with. You can just see the amazing bond and relatability jumping off the screen, if it can even get off the ground, that is. So once again, this plot point falls completely flat because we literally know nothing about why he's affected by this. His entire character rests on an element that's impossible to resonate with the viewer, making a rather tragic topic feel just basic and mundane. Other than that, I guess you could say that him being involved in the powers that the kings use adds to his character. Except add sure isn't the right word, since this whole plot point makes him look incredibly naive and stupid. First off, he says he's going to use the powers for, and I quote, "to make everyone happy. Oh, the cheese is back." You know, the same powers that have only been shown to be used for fighting and more or less explosions. But wait, it doesn't stop there. He hopes that the power isn't going to be used for war, but the people he's working for, which I won't say who because of spoilers, are so incredibly blatantly obviously going to use it for war that Weissman must literally be out of his mind not to know that. It's honestly on the same level as working for the North Korean government and thinking, well, I sure hope they don't use this obviously war-capable power for war. I know I'm kind of nitpicking here since this isn't a foundational element of the anime, but it sure is a foundational element to Weissman's character, and he unfortunately becomes an important part of the anime. Now, I don't hate all of the characters because the only one I thought was really good was the Red King. The anime does an excellent job of giving him a laid-back, hot-headed personality while not being something that's extremely original. The way the anime presents it throughout the story gives him a strong sense of definability. Like how even though he's dead set on getting revenge, he's still able to wait in a jail cell to get information. Or when his clan is out hunting for the guy he's looking for, he takes a break relaxing. And lastly, he is so completely set on taking revenge on another character himself, he doesn't even care if he will die because of that. Even though he gets an offer to have someone else kill him, he really doesn't care because he already has his mindset on that goal. When you usually think of the typical revenge-obsessed character, they generally aren't able to be patient and relaxed while at the same time being completely bent on revenge the exact way they want it. And because of this strong presentation, it makes his character very interesting and enjoyable to see on screen. The last part I want to talk about is the second half, which, to be fair, was better than the first half, although that's not really impressive. We finally get to understand what's going on and how this stuff works for the most part. Along with some okay but appreciated exploration with the side characters, a more interesting story, and some good tension with the conclusion. However, that's mostly because the anime gave more focus on the Red King and his goals, and because he was a good character, it made the plot a bit more interesting in what would happen to him. But to be honest, without the Red King, nothing is done that's all that special, more so mediocre. The main problem is still that most of the characters are basic and boring, so you won't be interested in what happens to them. Yes, the story is still better than Yashiro's quest for innocence, but it's still a generic two groups are fighting type of thing with, for the most part, nothing impressive in character development or drama. The only moment I thought was pretty good was the final scene, where the action slows down and the animation and music can create a contrasting calming mood from the battle. This does a great job of creating some beautiful atmosphere and emotions from all the characters. Not that I could say that about the rest of the anime though. So in the end, even though I don't like this anime, I do believe it was possible to be at least a good B-rank anime. I mean, the animation definitely showed that there was work put into this, but story and characters are always far more important. The main characters are nothing special, nor do they do a frequent type of character very well. I will be fair and say that some characters do have one or two good lines, but that's not enough to make them definable. The story, more so in the first half, is an absolute mess, where it is more likely to confuse the viewer instead of actually creating investment. When the story decides to improve itself a bit more, it's just your typical action anime with nothing to make it special. While I did like the Red King, he is nowhere good enough to save a whole anime with several flaws in its foundation. Well, howdy-do there! I've completely run out of unique and interesting ways to start the end slate, so it's just going to be incredibly awkward. From now on. Forever. Enjoy. Videos everywhere! There's as many videos as your heart can ever dream of, as long as that number is 19. I think. I'm pretty sure it's probably like 20, including this one. And like one of them's a joke video and the other one's a review of the ending of Gurren Lagann. Remember when I said this was going to be awkward? Well, almost forgot to tell you what the reviews were. There's Maria the Virgin Witch and the Eden of Grisaya. Yay! But other than that, we have my Twitter and my Hummingbird, which has been new and improved and turned over to a star rating system, and I even wrote up a little thing about the rating system, and it's on a Word page. And I wrote it in English for you. And you can click on Hummingbird and there's a link over there, and I'm gonna make this incredibly complicated because you need something difficult to do, I'm assuming. Just go on, do whatever your heart desires. You'll figure it out. Trust me, I believe in you mostly.
I play them whenever I need guidance in my life. Perfect, don't you think? Creepy.